Hello, my name is Andy Eubanks, President of Floresville Economic Development Corp. I'd like to call a meeting for the regular meeting of today is Monday, June the 9th, 2014 at 6:30. And we have Roland Castro, Ray Lambert, Mary Helen Pekin, Graham Ramirez, Jason Talley, and David Johns. We have a full quorum here. So I'd like to stand and you lead us in the prayer. Stand in the pledge of allegiance to the flag and Texas flag.
Dear Lord, please bless this meeting and the minds of these directors. Help them to be fully aware of the needs of the city of Floresville and how we can work together to accomplish great things here in Floresville. Bless all that are here. Bless your families and keep us and guide us in your protective care. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Citizen comment, we have citizen comment, I don't see anyone here. Okay, in your package you have minutes from May 12th, 2014. I'll give you a moment to look at that, and I'd like to dispense to the meeting, the reading of the minutes, please. Is there any addition, correction, or comments regarding the minutes? Now I'd like to call for a motion to, Mary Helen made a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. So all in favor of approving, well, any comment, discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes for May 12, 2014, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Treasurer report, I'd like to turn this over to Mr. Jason Talley, please.
Okay, in your packet, there's actually 2 months of reports, and one of them, of course, at the top will say April. So your top right-hand corner is going to say April through April 30th, and then one of them will say May 1st through the 31st. The first page, I'll just kind of go through some of the checks that were written and explain those briefly. The first check there on April 10th, $274.16, that was some miscellaneous printer supplies, things like that at the office. The second entry was a payment to the accounting firm that Ms. Wagner's with. She's here tonight to give us a report on the audit. Phelps payment was the Udo Hoban extension out there at the business park. City of Floresville was $1,800. Now this was for rent that we've never been billed for, and so we've requested the city to, go ahead and get that to us for you to, let's see, it would be in this packet right here. So that rent, plus on the May statement, you'll see the rent, and that catches us up through March. So then you'll see April, May, and June on the June financials. Okay, so that's where we're at there on rent. So this was actually for just the first 3 months of our fiscal year reflected here. Okay. Fraser Ranch, that was for some shredding. That's paid for shredding to be done at the business park. L&M Construction Repairs, some damage that was done to the Bear Warehouse, as well as some security lighting. City of Floresville, that's just simply our bills each month. Another payment to the accounting firm. And then Greg Henricks was a reimbursement for the flags, which I think the EDC's maintained for a while at this memorial. This gentleman bought the flags, he's with the American Legion, and that was reimbursement, okay? I'm not gonna go through the other parts of this because we're gonna carry on over to May, and then we'll look at the running total of everything there on the main statement. But the last time I was not here due to business, and I think y'all looked at the March financials. Let's go ahead and take a look now at May. It's the same packet, but with the May dates at the top right corner. You'll see there Wilson County News, that was for classified ad, trying to, advertising for lawn maintenance and shredding. Ditmar was, of course, some repairs that need to be done at the beer warehouse, sink repair. Natalie May, that check there was 50% of the cost that had been submitted so far on the facade improvement to the theater. Then accounting for 3 months. Remember, that's a $350 fee. That was to catch us up to where we need to be there for the accounting that we pay to the city of Floresville. Druid Designs, there has been a switch to a different web provider, and Tommy can possibly go over that in a little bit, but it is going to save some money, and we'll have more control to be able to post things in a more timely manner. Tile Express was some mineral research that we had to do in relation to some property, which would be the, what's the name of the property? Hammer.
Appletech.
Right. That was paid to them to research minerals that we seem to have some trouble finding and confirming, so that was for them. Sunco Water, that had to do with, Tommy, you want to tell us real quick, because
Remember, we had at the last meeting, we had a real short fuse on a contract for the 2 acres in the house. So they set a real tight closing date, and that was May the 20th. So I immediately ordered a survey, and I had to put down a $2,100 for them to bore under Rancho Grande and to get water to the 2 acres. And I also had septic inspection and so forth. They canceled on the 19th of May, and so I was able to cancel everything except the survey, which had already been completed. So to the right of that $2,100, you'll see it voided. So I was able to stop that and the septic inspection, and we'll wait on the next buyer.
okay, so going down the list, so that of course was voided there. Going down the list, City of Floresville, our normal expenses there for the month. North Carolina was an ad in a trade type publication. Udo-Hoven, that was the $25,000 that was applied to the entrance for the off of 537 there. City of Floresville is a combination of payroll and those services we pay for them. Once again, rent showing up again. You see legal for property transactions. D&O, we did have a renewal of our directors and officers liability, which is in line with what it was last year, so that really didn't change. And then the last one there was $400 payment to VFW Post as a result of the beer warehouse being booked by, well, it was supposed to be booked by the Rotary Club, because they have their annual shrimp boil. And then it got right down to it to where they confirmed the date, and oops, there was somebody else on that same weekend. And so Tommy, in the, trying to make this the best situation possible, because if you recall, the signs have been up for the Rotary Club function for many, many months and advertised that. So the person that was supposed to have their party at the beer warehouse, we were able to negotiate another location, and Andy and myself, approved that we difference since it was a mess up somewhere that resulted as it not being recorded. And, anyway, that's what was paid in the difference to get the property booked for them so they could have their party. And it was just kind of one of those bad situations you won't find yourself in, but it just, it happened.
Jason,
Yes.
can I ask on the director's insurance that
Mhm.
Wolfville, they have the names of the new members? Are we named
I don't,
individually?
you're not even required to be named. So, but I mean, if anybody wants a copy of that, or wants to get some, if you feel like, sometimes we could just add you to the additional insurer, but you are an insurer without being named. Because what it states in the policies is directors and officers of the EDC. So, but if anybody wants a copy of that, or you'd like to view one, we've got a copy there at the file at the EDC office. Okay. So now, let's go ahead and go to page 1 of this report. And if you look at the left-hand column there, that's the budget. You look at the third column, that's year-to-date actual. And then you look at the far right column, and that shows you the percentage of where we're at in terms of budgeting. So at the top, see where it says, the top right corner, it says percent of year completed. That's how many months as of May that we've completed so far. So we're at 66.67% of the year, fiscal year. These numbers to the far right show us that we're actually already 77.08% of the budget in terms of revenue. So we're ahead of revenue, okay? When you add the third column up, you come to that $570,000 number, $570,071.27. Then if you turn to page 9, you will see the total expenditures in the third column. So the total expenditures year-to-date is $189,362.88. So the number below that, you'll see $380,708.39. What that reflects is the profit year-to-date of the EDC. So you've got your total expenditures minus your expenses, that's the actual revenue right there, total after expenditures, okay? Then starting back on page 2, then you can go line by line and you can see, how we're doing, current period, year-to-date. There's a few areas that we're over a little bit on budget, technology being one. The liability insurance was a few dollars off there for the directors and officers. And then you're going to see, as you turn back past the industrial park, you're going to see some of those line items out of whack because of expenditures that we just weren't planning on, and it just happened. But when you look at the total year, how we're running in terms of revenue, will be way above. Even if we spent our entire budget, the amount that we budgeted, we'll still be way ahead. We're probably going to come in about $160,000 ahead if we spent every dollar in the budget to the black. And I don't anticipate us spending every dollar in the budget because we're already, where we're at in the year, and we conservatively, managed our dollars. Now, does that mean that we need to spend some money? Yes, I do think we need to spend some money in some areas. But, we've had a lot on the plate getting where we need to be with our projects, and I think here in the next month we'll start to see that changing where we can do a little more marketing and things like that. I do want to point out one line item. That's on page 2 under advertising and marketing. That's where that $25,000 was put, but I'm not going to leave it there. That's going to be put under the business park, under streets and maintenance and curbs, because that's really what it was. That $25,000 was the entrance that we paid for that entrance. Okay?
And also the 3,500 to Phillips.
Yes. So those items need to be recorded in the business park section. I just wanted to point out that we really haven't exhausted the marketing budget, okay? That's why I wanted to let you know that. And I do have copies of the reconciliation statements for each month, April and May. And I do want you to know that I have the copies of the checks as well for for the reasons to save paper and stuff. If you do want to view these checks, these do match our checks that are noted on each of these reports, because I have looked at the checks just to make sure that the checks match. And then also, just to kind of give you well, I had it totaled up. Currently, as of May 31st, and you can jot this down if you'd like, the total, and really in the future, I think what I'm gonna do is make a copy of the reconciliation statement, and y'all can just have that unless you think that's just too much. It gives you the total balances at the top. But I'll just go ahead and call this out. It's $985,632.56. That's the money market. $383,356.66 is the checking. Comes to a total of $1,368,989.22. Actually, $1,368,989.22. Okay, and the purpose of this accumulation is because we had a challenge when we came on board here with having enough money so that when we're ready to move forward with paving and those kind of projects, we could on that business park project. And so I think the group's done a great job accumulating this so that we could move forward with paying for some of those projects out there. And that concludes my report. Is there any other questions?
Who does the reconciliation? You do that, or?
No,
Tommy?
the city does that. Yeah.
Good, but you'll, how do you want that, to maintain dual control on our reconciliation? Do you have a date when you may want to pull your audit committee together and start your budget preparation for next year?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this today, that's coming around the corner, so, really,
You may want
be
to
doing that at the end of this month and probably work on it in July, and then that way we can, have it ready for city council.
I think that would be very good. I think good report, sure it's nice having it deep orderly. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report? We have a motion, do I have a second? A motion, second, approve the treasurer's report, and there are 2 months in here for end of May 31st, 2014, and April 30th, 2014. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Committee report, we had finance, anything you want to add, Jason, other than you may be contacting audit committee members?
No, nothing to add at this point.
Personnel,
No personnel action.
Mr. Tommy, I want to let you do your executive officer report, please.
I'll make this fast. I've had a number of meetings with some investors out of Dallas that their card says Blue Steer. The way I understand it, these people have individually made their fortunes, and they come together as a group of investors to invest in a number of different things, one of which is office buildings, real estate, and so forth. The spokesman was going to be here tonight, but he called me this afternoon and said that they're looking at a different use for property in the industrial park. And I'm not saying they're going to commit to this, but the discussion so far has been that they would contract with a dirt contractor to build the two retention or detention ponds that we're responsible for in the industrial park. And for that, they want to trade, and we've never talked about any cash boot, so this is just service for service, or service for land. They would want the 23.7 acres that we have left in the industrial park that is southwest of Gas Frac. In the very corner of the park, the only, if this went about, there would only be the 2 acres and the house left in the park. But they're still getting their hands around the contractors' bids and so forth. But, you know, it'd be a great deal for us to get those out of the way. I think our engineer talked about $500,000 to $700,000 for these retention or detention ponds. So if we can trade that for land, then we, I think we'll make a good deal, but we'll see. But they're also looking at lots in the business park. And they're also looking at a possibility for a private-public partnership involving the city, the city and waste management in some aspect, and some things that they do. They also buy inventions, and they have a number of inventions, one of them that they would put to use if they did this public private partnership. Let's see, I explained a while ago about the 2 acres, and I was able to stop everything but the survey, and we needed a ground survey anyway, and stakes so that people can see what 2 acres is gonna be buying. I also met with the editor and vice president for the Wilson County News about reporting our monthly projects from the FEDC. They've made us an offer that if I write up the projects and submit them, that if they have available space, they will put that in the paper at no charge, and that they term that as a news release. The only other, the problem is that, say, in the month of April, I had a standing projects list that they had, but they never had space available. So, I think if we went to buying space, it would probably be $100 to $120 a month to do that. Right now, it's left where they have April/May projects to insert in their weekly editions of the June printouts, papers. And there's no guarantee, but they know I want to try to inform the public about what we're doing, so I think they'll be on our side. I met with Eric Rodriguez on May the 14th. That was one day before his deadline, and went over the final stamped construction plans for the bowling alley, and all of those are submitted. Eric now is submitting those to subcontractors. He's a general on the job, and his next deadline is July 15th to tell us that he's gotten loan approval. I have a real positive note on E, and that is that all the internal roads in the industrial park have been graded, watered, compacted through a cooperative effort between the city and the county and the FEDC. The city Henrietta wanted to cross-train her road crew on blade work. And so Paul File, the county commissioner, agreed to have his best maintainer person train, I think it was four
Yes, it's four.
four city staff on how to use a maintainer and run it and so forth. And so the city provided a water truck, packing and maintainer. We didn't get charged for anything but 5 loads of fill. And the road looks great right now. All the potholes are filled and, you know, it'll last us until we hopefully get around to paving here quickly. That's all I have.
On the, Tommy, on that, did they only work on the straight road? Because I was out there yesterday, and I didn't see no work on the other one that crosses over.
Yeah, they did work on both.
I was out there yesterday and they worked them all. They didn't go down past the intersection of Cardinal and Roscoe Grande. They didn't continue on south of that other road, but they did all the roads that were paved.
Well,
And I asked them to stop at the, where the Unihoven improvement fence is, not to go any further. But we're gonna pave that, but I asked them just to do what was existing, and there was several gigantic holes at that intersection, and they're all filled and packed and bladed and so forth, so it really turned out to be a great thing. Anything else?
no, but I was out there and, you know, to me, you know, I just wondered, because it didn't seem.
From the condition it was before. and
Well, I had
before
been
it
out
is
there
now.
about 2-3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and there was, you know, they did have a lot of potholes.
I could tell where they had the rock off the end of it, they did later on. Anything other questions?
I just think that, you know, I'm just glad to see the county and city and EDC working together, and I think that's a real positive thing to see, and we appreciate Commissioner Fowle coming in there and helping out. I think that's nice.
Very good cooperation. We're going to move on to new business. We had the facade grant application from Ms. Maple. Stacy, I see you're here. I believe you're going to be one. Can we help you do anything to pass anything out? You on the end of the table, or
Well,
the floor is yours, in other words?
what I did was I brought, just for purposes of what the facade used to look like when we first did the remodel on that building. There was an artist that was traveling through at the time, and he did these of the building. So this is kind of where we were in the origination of how it looked. And at the time, I think it was a very attractive addition to the downtown area, and we've certainly been down there for a number of years with our business, and we want to maintain that business down there. So as I'm sure if you've been down through the downtown area, you've seen the deterioration over the years. A lot of the structures at the time were with wood, and that's where a lot of the deterioration has happened. So our plan going forward to start the renovation on it, which I believe is supposed to start next week. Hopefully start next week. My experience with contractors. Hopefully start next week. We'll be doing this over in stucco and try to use materials that are going to have a longer sustaining maintenance issue, so we don't have rotten woods and that kind of problem. The awnings and the light too, we're going to be taking down, cleaning and repainting to refurbish and refresh those. And I think you already had gotten
The estimate?
Right, the estimate and.
I also have pictures that you sent, and I'll
Right.
just pass those around.
Yeah, I've got another set if you want me to,
Okay.
on this side. And those pictures will show, obviously, there's one picture that shows this photograph, but it's what you're seeing when you look at the building right now, with some of the deterioration. I know we've also had talk of trying to put in a drop box area for the dry cleaner pickup, so that we can kind of accommodate some of our customers that can't make it there during business hours. But that, right now, we're looking at trying to put something into the back of the building, and that's not necessarily in the scope of this.
And this also includes curbs.
Yes.
Yes, that's
Mrs.
what
Maple
it's all.
sounds
Yeah, the entire building is our property. Of course, the curbs is still there. And
Where it says label stable,
label stable,
tree,
label
that's
tree.
all.
Yeah, this is all curbs. This was back when we had the home office businesses. So I'm sure y'all remember. So, I mean, it's a beautiful building. I mean, especially if you've still ever been on the interior with the pressed metal roof or ceilings and the other things. And we've been trying to always maintain a good integrity on the building. So our hope, and of course our intent is to, go ahead and get this restoration done and we hope.
I've had a business downtown since, I know, 89.
It's 1989.
Not all in that location, but up in what was the Turner Building, and then
When we took over
Maxine's
Maxine's.
was, and then here.
And the way this started out was Mrs. Maples called me and had visited with the owners of the Arcadia Theater, and she was apologizing and saying, oh my gosh, she's lost her husband in the last few years, and just, she said, I'm embarrassed. So she really is gonna be after these contractors to get this fixed. She's most intent on getting that done.
It's the same contractor that did the movie
Yeah, the movie theater.
theater.
So at least that's somebody that's understanding and familiar with what it's got to do.
Are y'all gonna keep similar colors, or what are the plans?
A better coloring, more to go like with the courthouse. What's on there right now, I think, was done, either I was ill or Alan died. I don't know, it's so many things that happened, and they got a chance to put some paint on there, and it was, I hate the color that they put on there, but I like to go to colors that coordinate sort of with the courthouse. So it would be similar to this, maybe not
Right, yeah.
quite as pink, at the time I was going with pink. Because it was a dress shop,
The
so.
black doors and we're gonna continue that. That's,
So, and, we painted the awnings black.
Hey, Tommy, correct me, but this is college, you received the application and everything through this, so we're up to that. The policy, this is a program that we instituted in here where we would reimburse up to 1/2 of the cost. It doesn't say we have to do all of it, but we could reimburse up to 1/2 of facade. And I see this is all facade, nothing in the back, what they're talking about.
exactly.
And it has a limit of 7,500
That's correct.
per occurrence. So, naturally, half of the 3775 is underneath the 75 limit that we have. Question to them regarding what they're looking at or anything?
We have our
Andy,
intention.
does that include the 350 they
Yes.
added?
Yes,
for the-
ma'am.
Yes, it's on for the awnings. I mean, our intention is obviously to maintain the business downtown. So there will continue long-term. I'm becoming more and more involved in, I'm living in Corpus, but I come up regularly, of course, with my mother. And so we're still in this for the long haul. Y'all have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, we have for us for consideration and action for an application for our facade grant program from Maple Tree to the total cost is $67.75.
I'll move that we approve the facade grant application for Leona Maples for the total, 50% of the total indicated on the estimate.
We have a motion in second to approve 50% of this $67.75. Do we have any other further discussion? Any questions or comments? If not, All in favor of approving this grant, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed, and we thank you for taking
Thank you very much.
Wait,
advantage of this.
and we'll pay off of,
Off of the
paid
contractor's invoices.
bills, so just when they get through, just give me the bills and I'll get a check cut.
Thank you
Y'all
all
take
so
care.
much.
Thank you.
You got it. Thank you,
Appreciate the
ma'am.
help.
See you, take care.
We're moving right along, and the next one is we have an audit report from Mr. Pat Wagner. Thank you, Ms. Pat Wagner, for showing up. If you want to join us up here, you want to stand up, how you want to do it?
Is it all right if I join you here?
You're sure welcome.
Am I gonna crowd you too much here?
You just elbow in there. and-
Elbow and those pushy auditors. Your audit information was included in the audit report to the city, which was bound, and I think you all got a copy of that. What I intend to do is I've excerpted from this audit report information relative to the EDC that I thought I would go over with you, what I think are high points. If you have any questions, just chime in. As I get into this, you'll see that the information in the city's report for the EDC and for the other component units is very summary. So given that, I also included the trial balance in your handouts, and I'll just go over that briefly. What it does is it's an inventory of your accounts. It shows your assets, liabilities, revenues, and expenses. It'll give you a lot better detail of what the summary numbers are. And it's something that your financial advisor was looking for as well, some more operating detail. So looking at the first part of the handouts, the letters are our opinion on the financial statements. And if you look at that paragraph at the bottom of the first page, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the government activities, business activities, and the discretely presented component units, one of which EDC is. Unfortunately, that presentation is in accordance with governmental accounting standards, and it's not as informative if you had your own set of financial statements, which would provide a great deal more, a lot more detail.
For more cost.
I might suggest for more cost. Yes, for a separate report, you know, it has to go through the printing process and the preparation process, so it is more expensive. What I'm considering doing, if the city doesn't object to this or whatever, we'll get together when we get to the report, is back in the city's report, we can put supplemental schedules back here. And you may go ahead and put at least 4A and 4B in a supplemental schedule at the end of the city's report, so that you and the financial advisor is going to have a little more information about a little more detail on city operations. But we'll work out that detail a little bit later. So that's our opinion. I didn't staple your packet together because the next pages, 10 and 11, are facing pages. But I wanted you all to see where you are in this audit report. And you are looking at page 11, you're the second to the last column. Now, y'all are businessmen, I know you've seen balance sheets before, and this is pretty straightforward. It looks like most balance sheets that a business might present. So you have your cash at the end of the year, you from other governments, inventories. The inventories, by the way, is the property that's held for sale only. Tommy and I spent hours trying to identify what was for sale, what were right-of-ways, what was land where the detention ponds were going to be. And so I think we came up with a pretty good listing of the inventory that you all have for sale in the business park and the other properties as well. And I provided the worksheet that Tommy and I collaborated on to Tommy, and I think to you as well, Jason. So I think we have a jumping off point. Just scanning on down here, we show your notes receivable, Center for Housing, and a receivable, let me see, Center for Housing, right. And let's look at the liabilities. Do you see about 3/4 of the way down the page, we have non-current liabilities, which are amounts due within 1 year and amounts due in more than 1 year. That $63,800 you probably recognize as your next principal installment that's started the city audit 3 years ago, part of that bond issue was peeled out and put on 4A and 4B's books. But the bond issue is not 4A and 4B's, it's the city's. So we put it back on the city's books where it belongs, but then you all have an interlocal agreement with the city that says we'll reimburse you a percentage of this every year. So that's what that is, the interlocal agreement with the city, those liabilities. Now, if you look a little further down, we have net investment and capital assets, that's the $411,360. Now I'm in the net worth section, in other words, assets minus liabilities is your net worth. Some of that net worth is not spendable because you've got it tied up here in your fixed assets. But what is spendable and available is $307,274. If you will, that's your liquid position. Does that all make sense, that balance sheet? This next one isn't going to make a lick of sense. Government Accounting Standards Board, in its infinite wisdom, decided that, oh, we're not going to have an income statement. We're going to have a statement of net activities where we're going to start out with expenses. And if I could have you look on page 12, you see in that first column the $603,162. You see that? That is your total expenses for the year. That includes the write-off of the depot, because Tony's in my discussion said you had it on the books for almost $75,000. It's not worth $75,000 and will require a great deal of work. So that we took off as an asset, so that includes that hit. What's also included in expenses is when you sold lots last year, you incurred some losses on most of them, which is fine. I mean, EDC is not in the business of making money on lot sales necessarily. So it includes about $75,000 in lot sale losses as well in that number. Now, we'll come back to that because I have that scheduled someplace else so you can see a little more detail. Then moving over to the right, you have that $9,930, which is under charges for services. And what that is the beer depot rentals that you got for the year. So where we're going with this is we have these assets and they're generating some income. And what's the net cost that must be covered out of sales taxes in your case? So if we go clear over the right, the net cost under Floresville EDC of $593,232 is what's paid out of your general revenues. So keep on going down the page. You had sales tax revenues of $695,800. You had interest income, which is the housing loan, as well as what little you earn in the money market. Nobody's earning much. That 293 is actually miscellaneous expenses, or income rather, I'm sorry. And what that is your mineral lease payment that you got. And then you had a donated asset of worth $105,000 that was actually donated in 2012, but it was put on your books in 2013. So that's that number. So then you get to your increase, or your net income, if you will, of $397,403, adding your net worth from the beginning of the year, and that gave you the total net worth of the $718,634. I know this is a messy schedule, but does that kind of help?
One thing I do have a question about, because it seems, and I just happened to notice this, but on the interest, that seems low for a combination of that housing payment, and then, of course, I know the bank interest would be minimal. But
Yeah.
that seemed awful low for a year, if that included that schedule. I don't recall what
Let
the
me
rate
look at
is,
that.
but that's just something to, I think, go back and maybe check that, because that almost seemed too low.
Yeah, because that was interest only, but I think there's a note that they're paying some extra principal on it as well.
Right.
Well, and one goofy thing is, because of the transition at the end of the year, payments were being made on that note, but the checks weren't actually deposited into the bank. And that happened right around the end of the year. So Laura said that you had a big deposit that hit, I think, right after the end of the year on those. Does that ring a bell? Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
I think.
Well, there were some payments that were not made, yeah, that's true, but then they caught up with one check or something.
Yeah,
That
and I
actually
think there were
occurred
some
really
checks.
just in the transition, I think, of you coming on board.
Yeah, October.
Yeah, okay.
I'll
But I mean, still, the interest may seem off, but that's just the thought to look at.
I'll take a look at it, see what makes up that number. And as I mentioned, this looks like accountant fees, and I apologize, it is. When we make a contract to do an additional schedule back here, I'll be able to do a financial statement. I can't do one professionally without slapping some kind of opinion and disclaimer on it, and you all didn't, choose not to do that. And I think that at the time it was a good decision, because I think probably Laura and even Connie can prepare financial statements for you. But the first page is really assets and liabilities. And I've grouped them so you can see where those numbers actually hit your report. But I'm going to ask you to focus on the next page, the 2 of 3 and the 3 of 3. Those are revenues. You see the revenues at the top, about the top third. And then we start with our expenses, going down the bottom 2/3 and then on to the last page. So I didn't spell expenses right, but so the total expenses, the $454,540. The loss on the sale, the lots, the write-off of the depot.
Where are we at?
Page 3 of 3.
Okay.
So the reason I did that is I wanted you to see what detail made up that total expense that was back on page 12.
What's an impaired asset?
That's the write-off of the depot.
Oh. Now, I've got a question. You've talked before about when we make an improvement on a property. You've mentioned, maybe you could explain that better than I could, if a water line put in that property, it's not really our, well, how do you book that? I mean,
Well,
is
you all have
is
been
that supposed to be
booking
booked with the city? Is it supposed to be part of the property improvement value now?
The water line.
You've mentioned something about improvements in the past that need to be done and handled a little differently than they ever were because it had to do with values.
Right. Without getting, I'm not sure about the city's involvement, but let's say you all go out and you put in a detention pond and you spend $9,000 on that detention pond. The way y'all have been booking that in the past is you expense that. Well, no, it really is part of the cost of that property that you're developing.
I'm out. What about that? Thank you.
So what I do when it comes audit time is I try to identify all those capital expenses that you all have incurred and reclassify them to property that they relate to. Now, that's been a bit of a challenge too, because you use different names depending on who you bought it from. We have Martin as well as the business park, and so it's always been a bit of a challenge.
Right. Well, it's better now because I think we've got everything categorized pretty much by the property. So it should be much easier, in the future. So if we do put in a street or extension of a street at the industrial park, it's now booked as street maintenance or street
Up in
stuff
the
now in the
industrial
new
park.
categories. So-
And I think part of what Jason is referring to is in the business park, which is over by the Texas Veterans Home, that's a business park, that we had the city put in the water line and the sewer line, and they charged us for that. And, but it was an expense, but then again, you're saying we should include that as under the cost of, or the value of that property.
Yes, sir, that is correct. The
Well, let me
idea-
ask you a question right here though. That is if we own the land, so you can capitalize. But what if the city owns that land, or we're doing it through land that's not ours? That would be an expense.
It's
though.
different, you're
So
absolutely
if,
correct.
so if that, you see the difference there, if we don't own it, and that land ends up going back to, or if the city, it's still an expense then.
That's a very good distinction, I'm glad you mentioned that, because if it isn't your property and you've improved it, then it's an expense. So the difference
The
is
same thing if we
property
did,
is-
I know we're not doing incentives, but if somebody came in here and said, we want $50,000 for you guys to expend $50,000 to put in infrastructure, and we did that, that would still be an expense because they own the property
Yes, sir.
and, okay.
Yes, sir. That's a very good.
In this case, with the business park, we owned all the lots, and so it's a cost of the capital involved. Okay.
And then what we do, this has been going on for years, so we get down to the end, we identify what was sold, we identify what we put in, and then come up with a new cost per lot, and it's gonna change every year. And then when we sell that, we take that chunk out and expense it. So that's when it hits your P&L when you sell the lot.
I haven't had any issues with the preparation of the audit review and all, but one of the things that is a request that I had mentioned and requested before is exactly what you said, and if for us to have supplemental schedule for more detail, for like the 593 and things for our lenders that we may be needing to go back to, that is something I would like us to explore as a committee to do that, because this is information we're having to go back and pull from it, and it would be better if it was already included in the statement. And this would be just on a supplemental schedule, not having to pull another one, it's just a supplemental schedule we're shouting about.
Yes.
That's easy done, isn't it?
Yes, and I was on the
Thank
phone
you.
with your financial advisor, and he was mentioning that same thing. The last thing I've given you is a copy of the journal entries that we did, which are included in the trial balance that we've already done.
Now, from your outside view on this and doing it in a couple of years, are you appreciative of what we're doing now compared, and where do we need to get to? Have we made improvements, and where do we need to go?
Accounting-wise, there have been some improvements, mainly because we've been talking for the last couple of years. What I'd like to see, and this city is doing your books, is to get us away from doing journal entries, because technically I can't adjust your books and still be independent